Hello and welcome to Taylor Talks Comics episode 2. Taylor Talks Comics live episode 2. I've got my audio on to start the show this time. So I'm already one step ahead of last week. We got people in the chat already. I love to see that. Thank you for joining me. Please light up the chat. Say hello. Cycle, I was meaning to ask you this last week. Thank you for being the first commenter 2 weeks in a row. But when you and Jess Bragg say "Hey now," is that a reference to the Larry Sanders Show? Like the "Hey now"? I hope it is. But I always wondered if that you're always like "Hey now." Pray for the boys. Thank you for joining me. Let's go. Boo! Don't be like Omar and 5 minutes late. Yes, I've learned from the best. Always start at 12:05. And then James Abel is wondering where I am. And the Team James, to hell with Josh. Oh, there's a little infighting here going on in the chat. Thank you for joining me, though. I am Taylor Mitchell of Taylor Talks Comics. This is the weekly show where I go over all of the comic book news, talk about new releases, any drama going on any drama going on in the industry, which there isn't really much this week, actually. Just a lot of releases. I guess some Cyber Monday, Black Friday type sales to inform you guys about. Fantagraphics already did theirs. My favorite publisher, Fantagraphics. They did theirs. They did like a Black Friday weekend sale where they went over their holiday catalog, I guess was and then yesterday, they did 40% off everything, basically everything in the store, besides pre-orders, anything they have in stock. Besides, and there's a couple exceptions, like you couldn't get the Love and Rockets box that was not 40% off, like some of the top price things, but most everything else, 98% of their catalog of their in-stock stuff was 40% off, but that's over now. So I should have mentioned that last week. I'll try to be better about that. Whenever certain retailers or publishers or something that have sales, I'll try to be better about mentioning when those are and let you guys know. The guy discriminates against lobsters. Who's that? Josh? Let's talk Nate Garcia's current IG stories with podcast opinions. Nate Garcia's like the ones that are going on now. Everyone should follow Nate Garcia, though, on... Let me make sure my phone's off. On Instagram and social media, because he is... We talked about him a little bit last week. He's an up-and-coming cartoonist. He's at Nate Garcia's cartoons on Instagram. Let me see. Noise, Tandem. I don't know. I'm going to read those later, Cycle. Post it in Discord. Oh, the link to the show? You're right, I should. Let me do that. Or James, can you do that for me? I think he already posted it, letting everybody know the show is happening. I don't want to take up airtime doing that. Great with Butter. Nate Garcia's top tier. Yes, he is. So he's a 21-year-old kid. But I guess he's a kid. He's not a kid anymore, right? But he started really publishing his comics. He's been doing comics, I guess, since he was like a little kid, but really started publishing them when he was 18, and he sent me a couple. I posted it on the YouTube. Oh, yes. Okay. So James Abel posted it in that Discord. Thank you, James. You're awesome. I have an earlier video. It's called Cartoonist You Should Know, and Nate Garcia's featured in it. When he sent me comics when he's 18, and they're like remarkable. Like I was blown away that this kid was only 18. He's only getting better. He's got a few comics coming out soon. I think they're up for pre-order. One through Domino Books, which I think they're Domino Books on Instagram. It's called Flippy. But he's an awesome cartoonist, and he's going places. The minute that I got his first comics in, when he's 18, I'm like, this kid's gonna be published by Fantagraphics one day easily. Like he's like, I can totally see that. So search out Nate Garcia's cartoons. Did I say cartoons? On Instagram, and you'll definitely check him out. His stuff's awesome. Anyone under 50 is a kid. Okay. All right. I guess I am getting to the age where anyone under 50 is a kid. Also, I plan on being very kid-like into my 50s. Well, we all read comics. It's supposed to be like, isn't that the thing? Like only kids read comics. Sent you Yield comic on Discord. Can email it as well. Oh, thank you, Josh. I need to be better about getting on Discord more often. I'll look at that today. Thank you, Josh. But yes, so this is Taylor Talks Comics Live. Like I said, I don't have a lot of news stories today, but I have a lot of new releases and a couple sales going on for Black Friday I want to cover, and then a couple solicitations for the future that have come out. Let's do single issues first. So like I always want to do this every week, go over number one issues, like new series coming out starting this week. Hey Coley, sup Taylor, thanks for joining me, my man. And just so everybody can get informed of what the new series that are starting are. And if there's ever any comic book news, I'm going to put this in the chat. Any other comic book news that you want to let me know about, or a comic book series you want me to highlight on my show, or a Kickstarter, or anything like that, Taylor Talks email me here. So here's the in the chat, Taylor Talks Podcasts at gmail.com. You can always just email me there. Cover Bolgion Press. Is that a publisher? I've never heard that one before, but I definitely will. I'll look that up. You don't have to be on Discord that often. Just check the essentials like every post of mine. Can I put a notifications up for just your posts? All right, so we do have a what do I want to know? If this is old news, I don't know about this. Faster by Jesse Lonergan. Jesse Lonergan is awesome. Or Lonergan? Is that a new series by him? Faster? I haven't heard that one. Okay, so I'm going to go over, keep lighting up the chat, and I'll go back and forth between the chat and what I'm talking about. I'll try to do that pretty frequently. Let's do this one. So this series is starting. Let me pull it down. Make sure it's looking good on the screen here. I don't like that one. All right, let's do that. All right, so this is Batman Off-World. This is Jason Aaron's first Batman comic that he's ever written. And he's doing it with Doug Mahnke as the artist, which is really cool. So I'm trying to set up my second camera here so I can make sure that you guys can see me. Okay. So the artwork's going to be amazing because Doug Mahnke's awesome. You can see on the cover here, just that really detailed kind of horror vibes to his artwork. And this is a 1 of 6. So it's a mini series that Doug Mahnke and Jason Aaron are writing. And it's about a routine night in Gotham City for a young Batman. Proves to be anything but routine when the crime fighter is confronted with a sort of foe he's never faced before, one from beyond the stars. A universe of possible alien threats leads Batman to make a daring decision, to venture alone into the far reaches of the cosmos for the first time ever, where the Dark Knight will face the fight of his life. So it seems like this is maybe pre-Robin era Batman, and he's fighting some off-world aliens. And the artwork looks amazing. And it's Jason Aaron. He's moved to DC now. He's finished up with the Marvel after he finished up his Avengers run. So, yeah, check this out if you are a Jason Aaron fan. Then up next, I think I just want to double check here. Let me make sure I got this right. Yes, okay. I'm trying to get better about the sharing the screen thing and flipping from tab to tab. So now we have Titans Beast World Evolution, number 1. And this is a one shot, but it's part of the Beast World Evolution, which I think is like the new storyline or the new big event story kind of going on through DC Comics. And it's revolved around Beast Boy, Garfield Logan. But this is a one shot, and it collects Teen Titans number 5, Tales of New Teen Titans number 3, and a story from Action Comics 1051. They all reveal a piece of Beast Boy's past that could hold a key to saving the future. It's got a pretty cool cover there. And then here's a new one for Marvel. This one is Carnage number 1 by Torun Grönbeck. I don't know how to say her last name. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. She's the writer, and then Perry Perez is the artist. And this is Torun Grönbeck, her taking over the symbiotes of Marvel. She is writing Carnage, and then she will be writing Venom as well. So she is now the flagship writer, creator, kind of controlling the symbiote section of Marvel, the Marvel universe. And I want to definitely plug Omar over at Near Mint Condition. Go to his YouTube channel and go to the live tab. And just this past Sunday, I believe, he did an interview with Torun Grönbeck. And she is a great interview. She's hilarious. Her and Omar have a great, and Melanie is part of it too, Omar's wife. The three of them have great chemistry together. Like, they seem like they're best friends, even though they've only talked a couple times. But Torun Grönbeck, she's from Norway, I think. Hopefully I didn't get that wrong. But yeah, she's a great interview. And I think anybody needs to watch that. Just entertaining to listen to the two of them talk. And then she goes into her pitch for the series, and she really wants to take Carnage back to the 1990s era Cletus Cassidy, where he was like a serial killer. It was just like violent blood and guts kind of 90s bombastic comics. So that's where she's taking Carnage in this series. So if that sounds awesome to you, then pick up Carnage #1 this week. Speaking of 90s Marvel, though, we have DG Chichester and Netho Diaz bringing back the armored suit Daredevil in Daredevil Black Armor #1. This is a new miniseries. The covers will all be done by Mark Bagley, which is cool. Some people hate that, but I do like the kind of the thematic cover artist, where you have like the same cover artist every issue. That doesn't necessarily have to match the interiors. Like Alex Ross has done this a lot for series recently, where he did. He's currently doing the Ryan North Fantastic Four series, but he's also done the Immortal Hulk, which his covers on Immortal Hulk were some of my favorite artwork Alex Ross has ever done. He did the Ta-Nehisi Coates Captain America. So he kind of does this thing where he doesn't do the interiors, but does every single cover. It's kind of like I kind of like that overall package of the comic book that you get with that. One series I also liked that did something similar was the Grant Morrison era Doom Patrol, when Simon Bisley did a lot of those covers. Here's some interior artwork, though, they have for us in previews. I'm getting all this off of previewsworld.com, too, I should mention. But here's some interiors of the Daredevil Black Armor #1. So you definitely are getting 90s vibes here with the artwork. And I love when we've gone full circle to where these, like, the Black Armor Daredevil was always like derided. When I was a kid, like, everyone hated that armor and thought it looked stupid. But now we've gone full circle to where now it's like a nostalgic type thing. I think similar things have gone on with the Spider-Man Clone Saga. It's like this nostalgic trip where we go full circle to where it's like, now it's cool again. Like, everyone hated it, and now it's cool again. Then we have one of these retro series where Marvel has been taking. They'll have like a writer come in, usually a writer from the past, like an Anna Cinti, Chris Claremont, those kinds of writers. Here we have Tom DeFalco, and they'll write a miniseries that takes place in a previous era of Marvel. Really cool concept. My only fear for this is that, like, besides getting like slim trade paperbacks, I feel like all these series are just gonna like 10, 15 years down the road. I feel like all these series are just gonna be like forgotten, because they're not gonna be part of big collections, big omnibuses. They can't really package them together in a way. So it's like, when are they ever going to live on beyond just now? But anyways, I digress. Let me know in the chat if you have any different thoughts on that. But this one's Tom DeFalco, who has written really great runs on both Thor and Fantastic Four back in I think like the late 80s, early 90s was his era. And then Pat Olaf as the artist. But this is Secret Wars Battle World. So this is taking place during the Secret Wars event. This issue in particular is seeing alien suit Spider-Man teaming up with Human Torch, and it's rated Teen Plus. Anytime Spider-Man and Human Torch team up, I love it. I wish someone would write like a Spider-Man Human Torch team up series, really team up for like 50 issues, and just like really, and it could take place in the era of when Spider-Man was more of a teenager, or maybe late teens, college era. when him and Human Torch were really kind of bonding during that era. That's what I'd like to see. Oh, dang it! I just messed that up. Here, while I've messed it up, let me close out some of these tabs, and then I'll go back. Sorry. Keep lighting up the chat though. I could see a bunch of comments there. I will, once I get through all these. I only have a few more to share. Once I get through them all, I will definitely talk to you guys in the chat. So just keep asking questions, keep making comments, all that jazz. Up next, we have something from Silver Sprocket. They're a really small publisher that's really come onto the scene strong in the last couple of years with a lot of new releases, which I love. They do a lot of things that like the Drawn and Quarterly and Fantagraphics crowds would enjoy if you're one of those types of comic book fans. But this one is a one-shot. It's called Everything Sucks, Friends Forever by Michael Sweater. He is the writer and artist. And you can see the artwork here. Looks really cool. It says Parental Advisory on it. Looks like a rap album cover. I love that. It's last call, and Noah miraculously has an after-hours date lined up with a cutie. But first, he's got to make a pit stop in the bathroom. And weirdly, so do his friends. When disaster strikes and the door gets stuck, can our heroes escape with their lives? Blood, beer, and sewage-soaked chaos ensues. That's $7.99. It says in shops November 15th. That was last week, but it was on this week's solicit, so I don't know if it got pushed back or not. Then we have one from Rick Remender. So one thing I do want to note is that Rick Remender has his imprint with Image called Giant Generator. And during the last, was it New York Comic Con? Yeah, New York Comic Con, he made an announcement. And shoot, I forget. Someone let me know if they know. But it's like the first ever series that's written and drawn by someone that's not Rick Remender under the Giant Generator imprint. And then Rick Remender on social media recently has kind of teased, I guess, in the future that Giant Generator is going to be a much bigger imprint for Image with a lot of creative teams a part of it. So it's not just a Remender imprint anymore. He's going to be overseeing everything, but he's going to be like bringing in a lot of creatives to write and draw series that he's not doing himself. And he'll be still doing his own stuff too. He's announced quite a few series that he's writing for Giant Generator, but it's just like a growth of the Giant Generator imprint, I guess. But it's not just written by Remender anymore, which is kind of cool. Image has they've always had Top Cow, and they have like Skybound. They have these other imprints that kind of showcase these other creatives. But this one is the newest series for Giant Generator. It's called Holy Roller, and this is issue number 1. And it's not just Remender writing this, because you've got Andy Samberg of SNL fame and Joe Troman of Fall Out Boy fame. He's the guitarist for Fall Out Boy, not Patrick Stump, the lead singer, and not Pete Wentz, the bassist. That's like the lyricist, but Joe Troman, the other guitarist. So this is interesting that they have kind of a 3-man writing team here. And I love the opening line here, because everyone is sitting around wondering when comedy legend Andy Samberg would join superstar writer Rick Remender and Fall Out Boy's multi-talented Joe Troman to write a comic book about a vigilante hero who smashes people's faces with a bowling ball and everyone's dreams come true. Like as if like the whole premise is something that someone very specifically dreamed about. But Roland Boschi, sorry if I butchered your name. But he is the artist of The Scumbag, and I guess he drew some Wolverine comics. He will be the artist on this series, and it's called Holy Roller. Kingpin meets Inglourious Bastards meets Batman with equal parts action and humor. There's 42 full pages, 2 issues for the price of 1, 3 writers for the price of 1, same great low price of $3.99. So Kingpin meets Inglourious Bastards. That's a hell of a premise. And they mean Kingpin like the Woody Harrelson movie with Bill Murray. Not Kingpin, the Spider-Man villain. I did it again, dang it. Let me exit out of here. Share my screen again. Sorry, guys. I will get this under control in the future. All right, we only have a few more here. I think it looks like 1, 2, 3 more books to talk about. Mortal Terror by Christopher Golden and Tim Lebbon. The artist is Peter Bergting. But this is for Dark Horse Comics. A vampire flipped Dracula, in which mortality means life and life means death. Vampires Jonathan Harker, Lucy Westerna, Mina Murray live in underground London, trying to keep the undead city safe from the rumored mortals above who seek to give them life. So it's a vampire tale written by Christopher Golden. The cover looks pretty sweet. It also looks like it almost looks like it belongs in the Hellboy universe, but I don't think it does. Dang it, I did it again. Son of a gun. And then we have another kind of another horror comic. This is for Distillery Media. They are a new publisher that has like an all-star lineup of writers and artists, and they're trying to have like this unique way of releasing their comics. They almost seem like they're like a boutique comic book company, the way they advertise their stuff on social media. This one is written by Becky Cloonan and Tula Late, and Tula Late is the artist, with Becky Cloonan doing the cover art. So it seems like just a dynamic duo of the two of them. But this is set in the midst of a terrifying backdrop of the witch hunts in the quiet 1600s English village. Somna follows one woman's descent into an erotic escape from the confines of her puritanical world. The cover looks really, really just brilliant. It's done by Becky Cloonan, who's an amazing artist. And it's called Somna, a bedtime story. The last one, oh no, that's it. That was the last comic. So let me know if you're picking up any of those this week, or what other comics you're picking up in your pull folder, or your pull list over your comic book shop. I do have to say a shout out to my local comic book shop. Before I get to the chat, Comic Book University here in the Indianapolis area where I'm from has been around for over 20 years. I don't know how. I mean, I've been going to them for over 20 years. That's how old I am. And even at their old location, this is their second location they've had. And the owner over there, Rob, is retiring on Christmas Eve. I guess this is his last day. And then a new owner is taking over and reopening on December 27th. And it'll be called Mages, Comics, and Games. Comic Book University, though, if anybody's around has ever been to the Indianapolis area, James Abel, I think you're from Indiana. I'm sure you've been to Comic Book University. It's a pretty well-known and popular comic book shop in the area. It's a large one too. It's a really nice selection of collected editions and single issues. They've always been great there. Really been a successful shop. I mean, when I first started going to them at their old location, it was much smaller, and only Rob was the only guy working there. He had no employees, and now it's a much larger shop, like 4 times larger. And he has like anywhere from 3 to 4 employees working at a time, which is always the sign of a good health of a comic book shop, is when you walk into a comic book shop and see that they have multiple employees working. That tells you that they're thriving and successful enough to hire help. It's not just the owner, working every single day. So anyways, so they're staying open. They're not closing down, but they are changing their name with a new ownership. I don't know what's going to change as far as the inner workings of the comic book shop, but Rob just announced it last night, and I just wanted to give a small shout out. I know it's like local news here, but it's been my favorite comic book shop I've ever been to, and always been kind of my little happy domain that I like to go to, and just look through the racks and whatnot. So shout out to them. But let me know what you guys are picking up this week from your LCS. All right, let me catch up with the chat here. Goiter Corner, that's hard to say. Is the essential in the Discord. Jesse Lonergan wrote Hydra. I bought Faster like 2 years ago, I think. Hedra. Sorry, not Hydra. Yes, Hedra. Yes, that was like the is that the one that's like it's like broadsheet sized almost? Like he originally released it on a newspaper broadsheet size, but then he republished it with image with a little bit shorter, smaller print, smaller trim size. Sorry, trying to think of the word. But still larger than your normal comic book shop. Yeah, his artwork is just, especially from like a design sense, is really amazing. Let's not try to derail the show. Hey Juan, what's up, my man? How you doing? No, Elon, you have it all wrong. Let's try to derail the show. Okay. Excited about the new show. Thank you, Juan. Thank you for joining me. Juan was a guy that has been with me since my CGN live days over at the CGN YouTube channel. We have Space Monkey in the house. Thank you for joining us. That's where. Okay. Yes. So Torin Gurrenbeck is from Norway. Yes, I saw that, James. She does like your name. I hope that whenever she writes a new character, she has someone named James Abel. How cool would that be? It's also writing the 2000 AD Christmas special this year. That's awesome. And one thing in that interview too that was really cool to see was that her, one, she has a passion for war comics, which I didn't know that she had that. She's written like Thor and I think Valkyrie for Marvel, Carnage, obviously we talked about that, and then she's done Red Sonja. So I thought her passion was more of like kind of sword and sorcery kind of stuff. But she's like really into like old warplanes and war comics, like Battle Action and Garth Ennis's war comics that he's kind of done, because in this day and age, war comics are not very popular, but Garth Ennis has been like the only one trying to keep that genre alive. So I kind of hope that the two of them team up and kind of maybe inject a little bit of life into that genre, because I love war comics, especially classic ones like Harvey Kurtzman, Jacques Tardy, like those kinds of war comics are fantastic. Check out Far Distant by Lian Cheng. Okay, thank you, Elon. Molly Stocks Convoy. I want to check these out. I'm going to go back in the chat and today and then check these out. I always love comic book recommendations too. So if anybody has any comic books they've been reading lately that they feel like need to be on people's radar better. My lighting is really bad. I'm like glowing here. Let me know in the chat. Yeah, if you have any comic book recommendations or comic books you think should be highlighted more. Let's see if that works better. That's a little better. Definitely. That's one thing I want this channel and this show to be, is a bigger spotlight on comic books that people need to try. Let's do what we can for the industry. Blah, just spent money. Haha. On what? What did you buy? Did you buy comics? Warmth and food is only secondary of importance, Josh. Comics come first. Yeah, of course. Oh, just bought the Black Science hardcovers 1 through 3 and Daredevil Yellow. Yes, Black Science back in print this week in hardcover. It's a fantastic series by Rick Remender, especially if you're into sci-fi pulp kind of comics, which is, I love that Rick Remender has a love and appreciation for the sci-fi pulp era kind of comics, and whenever he's dabbling in that is when I love his stuff the best. Like Black Science and Fear Agent are my two favorite series by him. So definitely pick up Black Science if you've not read it. Stopping in to say, hey, we'll catch you all in the comments when I've watched the rewind. Thank you, Richard. Richard also joined me over at CGN Live back in the day. You can always eat and burn comics if you need to. Yes, everyone's having fun in the chat. I love it. Never been there. Oh, you never been to Comic Book University? Okay. I live in Vincennes. That's a little ways out. Comic Book University actually was highlighted on Omar over at Near Mint Condition, the aforementioned Omar. Whenever he goes into other cities, if it's not for a convention or anything, he always like hits up some comic book shops and films it. He came to Indianapolis and hit up a lot of the comic book shops in the area. And this was before I started working with him. Like I do his social media. And when him and I were just kind of like, we message each other every once in a while. And I hit him up and I'm like, I loved watching it because I was like living vicariously through him. Like, oh, that's a cool shop. Like this shop is not good. Why'd you go into that one? This shop is literally somebody's house where you have to like walk past his mother that's sitting in a chair in the corner to get to the comic book shop room. And it's really weird. But he filmed that one too. Literally, there's a comic book shop in my area that exists like that. And it shows up on comicshoplocator.com or whatever that is. And so I'm assuming that Omar and Melanie just typed in like comic book shops in Indianapolis and that one popped up. But like I was watching the video and I was like, no, don't go into that one. But he went to Comic Book University. So if you're wanting to see this cool shop I'm talking about, go look up, I don't know, just type in Near Mint Condition Indianapolis. I'm sure you can find it. I don't know. Hedra was quite broadsheet size, but That's the one. Yeah, not broad. Yeah, broadsheet's like humongous, maybe like bigger than your normal comic. The amount of people who read My Name is Clyde Cleveland is seriously about 90%. Funny story cycle. When I started watching Omnibus like 5 years ago, 8, 7, how long have they been on? 7 years ago? I don't know. Whenever I started watching Omnibus, like forever ago, I like wasn't really paying attention to like the comments in the chat and whatnot. And I don't think you could pull up the chat comments. Maybe that's what it was. So I never really saw people's names. Like I'd always watch them on repeat later. And I always thought they were saying your name was Psycho Cleveland, like you're psychotic. I thought your name was Psycho Cleveland. So I was like, oh, this guy and they always talk about how crazy you were and stuff. Because it's like, I don't want to say gimmick, but you know, that's like your thing. Like you like always yelling in all caps. So I always thought your name was Psycho Cleveland until I started looking at the chat. I'm like, oh, it's Cycle Cleveland. So it's kind of funny that people also think it's Clyde. Yep, Torrin has an award story published in Battle Action number 5, released recently in the UK. I want to try that out. I saw the interview. I want to read that for sure. And I know that 2000 AD/Rebellion has reprinted a lot of the old Battle Action comics. That's another hole in my war comics reading. I've never read that old stuff. Coda, yes, by Cy Spurrier. Alienated, also by Cy Spurrier. Recommend that one highly. Fantasy, however, it takes place in a world where the villain won. Yes, Coda was recently published in a hardcover. I need to pick that up. It's a story I definitely want to read. And Cy Spurrier is a writer that I don't know that I've read any Cy Spurrier. But he's definitely a writer I want to read more of. I know the Omnidog, Jess Bragg, he likes Cy Spurrier quite a bit. So I need to try his stuff out more. All manga chat alumni comics should be highlighted nonstop. You're right. I should. I don't think I've ever once messaged Omar. Really? That can't be true. You sent books to Omar. That has to be a lie. You just send them randomly? They've been going on since 2016. Yeah, you could see the chat later. Yeah, that's what it was. So I thought your name was Psycho Cleveland. The initial idea of Psycho Cleveland was 100% supposed to sound like Psycho Cleveland. This is a very lost bit of lore. What? Oh, well, that's even more perfect then. Psycho Cleveland. Cycle Cleveland. I thought it was because you're like a bicyclist. Like you like to bicycle around Cleveland. That's how I always assumed it was. Initial posts were under a different name, more boring name. Okay. So that's the chat for now. I sent the books he listed to his P.O. box. Really? You never once talked to Omar through message? That's interesting. The next thing I want to go over is that the full lineup for Free Comic Book Day has been released. Free Comic Book Day is oh, here we go. This is the wrong place to ask. I'm debating buying. Hold on, Josh. You want to talk Kirby? This is the best place to ask. I don't mind, and I don't mind off-topic questions. Sure. If you guys have off-topic questions that I'm not talking about, by all means, comic book related, hopefully. I don't mind talking about those as well. I'm debating buying a ton of King, looking at getting Absolute Fourth World, Bronze Kirby Omni, and the Dingbat book on the fence. I will tell you, Josh, I don't know if you saw this or not. The Dingbats of Love, is that what it's called? By Tomorrow's Publishing, the big red hardcover, is only $20 this week. Oh, wrong place because I know you'll push me, aka I kind of want you to. I got you. The Dingbats of Love, Dingbats and Romance, whatever it's called, by Tomorrow's Publishing, where it publishes a couple of those lost issues of Kirby from the 70s, is only $20 this week through tomorrowspublishing.com. I think it's tomorrows.com. Their website. It's whatever their website is because they're the publisher. $20 this week, and it's a nice hardcover. So if you're looking for that one, it's a little Black Friday sale they're doing. Absolute Fourth World and Bronze Kirby. If I were to pick one for you, I would do Fourth World. And I always say this too when people are reading Fourth World for the first time. I love Jack Kirby's Fourth World. I read it a handful of times. It's never ceases to amaze me. I think just like the amount of ideas that Kirby was like putting into each issue was like the guy was just exploding with ideas to where like you read one issue and you get introduced to like a dozen new characters, and then you read the next issue, and you're getting introduced to like a dozen new ideas, and it's just like this guy is like never stops. But I will say that those fourth world, the way they're collected by DC through the Absolute and the Omnibus, is that they include all of the Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen issues interspersed in there in chronological order. Those issues are great. I love them. Kirby kind of takes the goofy Jimmy Olsen from back in the day, where he's kind of like this goofy, like Archie kind of character, which is fine. But he takes him and puts him more in he's more of like a Indiana Jones type adventurer, going on these like archaeologist quests where he's discovering things about the fourth world characters. Great premise, great idea. I love those issues. However, they do kind of slow down the reading process of the fourth world. So if you're reading the fourth world for the first time, I almost tell people like maybe those first couple issues when he really, because I think Darkseid's first appearance is in a issue of Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. Read those, but then after those first couple of Jimmy Olsen issues, it really has to do less and less with the fourth world. So if you're reading it all in like succession, it kind of slows down like the reading experience of the fourth world. So I always recommend, like, if you're feeling like those are kind of slowing you down, I would just kind of brush through those and maybe read them afterwards. But all the other fourth world issues, like Forever People, Mr. Miracle, and New Gods, are all just brilliant stuff. I can't read those enough. And I have a New Gods reading order on my channel if anybody's interested. A reading order of the New Gods stuff from Kirby all the way through to the Death of the New Gods, I think, is where I ended it. Yeah, okay, we got that one. I emailed Riley back in the day before Omnibros to buy his mind management single issues from his blog, but beyond that, I believe the only Omnibro I've talked to outside the chat is Jess. I've talked to Jess and Omar, and I think I talked to Gio a few times. Also eyeing the fourth world absolutes. Are they good read without any deeper DC knowledge? Yeah, yes. They're definitely new reader friendly for sure, because the only DC characters that really appear at all is Superman, which, I mean, you know who Superman is. But other than that, it's all brand new characters that Kirby is introducing. So it's 100% new reader friendly. You don't need to know any deeper DC knowledge. And in fact, Kirby creates a lot of the DC lore that then takes place afterwards. So a lot of like the stuff that happens in like the Future Crisis events in the modern era, like Final Crisis for sure, was all taken from the lore that Kirby created in the fourth world. So it almost kind of introduces you to a lot of DC knowledge. And they're just amazing reads. This month, read all of the New Gods. Also own the Demon hardcover. Okay. Oh, so you read Kirby's New Gods. That's one thing. One way I've not read the fourth world stuff is I've not read it as just the New Gods and just the Forever People and just the Mr. Miracle issues without going back and forth, which is how they released them in trade paperback recently, which I think they did a box set of that too, where they collect all the Mr. Miracle issues in one book, all Forever People in one book, all New Gods in one book, and all Superman pals Jimmy Olsen in one book. I think that'd be an interesting reading experience as well. I might try that next time I do New Gods. I always like reading comic books in different contexts like that. I think it kind of opens your eyes to different things when you're reading them in different orders and stuff. Always go Absolute. It's the only Kirby I've reread, as it is a mixed bag and dated in many ways, but super contemporary in many ways. Plus, the art is so stunning. Yeah, I don't own the Absolutes, actually. I just recently sold my Omnibus as well. That was the first ever Omnibus I bought, so it's kind of near and dear to my heart. But I sold it because I need shelf space, and also I owned the old school standard size hardcovers. There's like 4 volumes of them, and this is just like a little snobby of me, but the way they printed them, they're kind of more on newsprint paper, a little bit matte paper, and the coloring wasn't as like that garish saturation that they do in modern coloring of DC and Marvel reprints of older stuff. So snobbishly, I like to read them in those old standard size hardcovers, but the Absolutes are beautiful. I've not gone that route. I'd imagine I would really love him. I do know that Tom Scioli wrote the introduction in Volume 2, and Tom Scioli, who's one of my favorite cartoonists in comics today, anytime he's talking about Kirby, I will sit at his pulpit and listen. The guy is my favorite person to talk about Kirby. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Gabe once messaged me apologizing for timing me out years ago because of a misunderstanding. He thought I was causing a problem. Oh, Gabe's a nice guy. I've not talked to him before, but he seems like a nice guy. Bad chaos. Actually, trying to stop a person who is. Oh, so you're being like a hero on the scene, and then you're misrepresented. Is there a good thing? It's good chaos. Elon and Cycle going back and forth. Unless I'm in a comedy podcast, that's pretty evil intentions. Any recent pickups or reads, Taylor? Thank you. That's a nice question. Last week I set up a poll of what Omnibus I should read, and I let you guys all pick. So I've been reading the Question Omnibus. The dust jacket's upstairs because I'm not one of those loonies that read it with the dust jacket on. I'm officially past the halfway point. I'm on page 489. About to start issue number 18, which I think is the crossover with Green Arrow and Batman. And I'm loving it so far. Like the first issue blew me away. If you guys have not read The Question Omnibus by Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan, the first issue absolutely blew me away. I've read the old Steve Ditko issues of Question, and it kind of enlightened a lot of the reading experience of this omnibus for me, because Denny O'Neil in that first issue, it reminded me a lot of what Alan Moore did with Swamp Thing, where in his first issue of Swamp Thing, he like to be vague and not spoil things, he kind of like kills who you think the character is and then resurrects who you think the character is. Whether or not that's literal or not, I'll let you read that for yourself and find out. But he really like breaks down the character, deconstructs the character, and resurrects it into what he wants the character to be. And that's kind of what Denny O'Neil does with The Question in the first issue. He really he doesn't kill him off literally. He really like deconstructs and breaks down the Question, who when Steve Ditko was writing the character, Steve Ditko, if you don't know his like personal beliefs and I guess politics, he was very black and white. He was very much like there's good and there's bad. There's no in between. You're either a good guy or you're a bad guy. And that's how he wrote his comic books. Like Mr. A and The Question were very much that way to a heightened degree because he's writing this as well. I'm sure if we had him on the dialogue for Spider-Man instead of Stan Lee, we would have seen a little bit more of that and less of what we got with Spider-Man, where he was kind of exploring the gray areas a little bit more. But regardless, so for The Question, Ditko really explored that kind of black and white area. Well, Denny O'Neil, who has very much ideologically different views than Ditko, very much a extreme leftist, or was, sorry. He wanted The Question to explore the gray areas in the story. So there's a lot of like almost like meta context going on through these issues where it's like The Question previously realized that he went through life thinking things were black and white, and now he's rediscovering those gray areas. And that's kind of what this story is about on a meta level. And you don't need to know that. Like, you don't need to have read the Ditko issues to appreciate that and know that. But it's adding an extra layer for me, having read that Ditko stuff, that I'm seeing. It's kind of opening my eyes, and I love that. I always love that kind of meta commentary or knowing the behind the scenes of things. And I've not read any interviews or anything with Denny O'Neil on The Question. This is things that I'm just assuming based on what I'm reading here. Once I finish the run, I'm definitely going to go explore that kind of stuff and see if I can find interviews of Denny O'Neil talking about this run in particular to see if I'm right or wrong about any of that stuff. But it's been really amazing. And like, there was a couple issues where it's kind of like, okay, this must be where it meanders a little bit. But then every once in a while, there's just like this one single issue where it's like, it tells a complete story in that one single issue, and it just blows me away. And that's what I love about Silver and Bronze Age comic books, is that how every issue kind of lives on its own, because it was written that way, because of how the chaotic the newsstand was. You can never guarantee that every reader is going to pick up every single issue. So they had to kind of write each issue to have a beginning, middle, and end. I wish we could kind of go back to that era, because in today's era, it's like everyone writes single issues to be like 6 issues is one story to like fit like the trade paperback model, which is whatever. But you don't. So it's like you read a one Bronze Age comic book issue, and then you read like 6 issues of modern comics, and you're getting like the same amount of story. So that's why I always say, like, when you buy an omnibus of like Bronze or Silver Age, you're getting more bang for your buck. Regardless, though, this question run has had a bunch of single issues that live on their own, and they're like mind-blowingly good. So thank you. As far as pickups, I haven't got anything new in the last week. I don't think so. I have a new haul to post. Thank you. Cycle, post that in the Discord. I'd love to see it. Do not recommend it. It got kind of odd since they don't tell you everything. At least first time. What's that? What don't you recommend? I'm sorry. I think I'm missing that. At least the first time. Spent more cash. Thanks for saving me $10 on the dingbat. You're welcome. Yes, Tomorrow's publishing their tomorrows.com or whatever it is are having a Black Friday sale. And they're a great publisher. I like they do a lot of historical stuff. Posted latest haul. Can't wait to see that. I have the question single issues. It is a classic. I will say also the covers. The cover to issue 1 is total Bill Sienkiewicz on his own. And he also does the cover of the Dust Jacket. I was under the impression that Bill Sienkiewicz did all of the covers, kind of like what I was talking about earlier when you have like a different cover artist than the interior. I thought Sienkiewicz did all the covers, so I was really excited to like see each Sienkiewicz cover, and I was like waiting for that treat of like each time I finish an issue, I got to see more Sienkiewicz art because Bill Sienkiewicz is like one of my favorite artists ever. I was kind of disappointed at first that he only inks the covers going forward after issue 1. And he inks like issues 2 through like 18 or 19, just the covers, inks the covers. But with that said, Dennis Cowan does an amazing job with some of these covers. Some of them are basic like superhero covers, but some of them have like this really like brilliant like design to them to where they really stand out. And being able to do that and also keep up on a monthly title interiors is really kind of a headspace that not a lot of artists can handle. So while I was disappointed at first that was not Sienkiewicz, Dennis Cowan's won me over. Sandwichism, objectivism, yes. That's what I was talking about. All that, all that Kirby and Gorilla's new album. The Gorillas dropped a new album. Is Jamie Hewlett, did he do the artwork for it? Josh Byatt did. Don't recommend reading New Gods by itself. Oh, okay. I think for the first time reading it by itself, maybe not. But now that I've read it a few times reading it by itself, I might enjoy it a little bit more. Show some of the art in the question, please. Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. So this is Dennis Cowan artwork on the cover here. And then this is also Cowan. Both of those are inked by Sienkiewicz. But the interiors, Dennis Cowan does most of the interiors too. I think there's only one issue he does not do. But there's a lot of great fight scenes in here too. Like the fight choreography by Dennis Cowan is really brilliant. Here's a good splash page. It's got a very much it looks like the era of DC. This was late 80s. It's like kind of like the Vertigo style. Like it reminds me of like what you saw in the artwork of like Hellblazer back then, or Sandman maybe. Maybe Sandman's not the best example because they kind of got a little bit trippy. The Watchers. Really brilliant story though. I've been nothing but impressed by the majority of it. He's really taking the question character in places that I didn't expect, though. Hopefully that was enough for you, Elon. I highly recommend you get the Innocent manga coming out tomorrow. I want to try that. That's the new Dark Horse manga, right? Yeah, that's been on my list. Probably like February, get more manga, falling behind. Afternoon all. Comic Crack. Thank you for joining us as well. Punkmaster B is also a big fan of the question by Denny O'Neill. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, that run's gotten really good. And I will say too, I'm always constantly buying and selling my books, so my collection's constantly evolving. Usually, once I've read a book, I'm like, okay, I'm done with it. Like, if I don't think I'm going to reread it again, I'll sell it. So that's kind of always on the back of my mind when I'm reading through. And so far, I think I'm going to keep this guy, the Question Omnibus. I think it's going to warrant rereading. And I know that Volume 2 is coming out in February, which I'm excited to also read that. And then I've got to get there's a Black Label title where Jeff Lemire wrote with Dennis Cowan on art duty of the Question. I want to read that after I've read Volume 2. Okay, let's get to the Free Comic Book Day announcements. Share this here. Let me make sure it's showing up on my screen. Sorry, my second screen's a little delayed here. Okay. So yes, Diamond Free Comic Book Day, they announced all of their new lineup. Free Comic Book Day will be on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. The first Saturday in May. I don't know. Has Free Comic Book Day ever fell on May the 4th before? Or is this the first time? It's usually always the first Saturday in May. But on previousworld.com, you can watch this video if you want. We're not going to watch it here. We're going to actually go through the list. But it's always exciting. They always do this like months in advance because, well, solicits have to be done months in advance. But let me know if any of these stand out to you guys. We have Unicorn Crush and The Worlds of James Tynion IV. So not all the covers are being revealed just yet, but this is The Worlds of James Tynion IV from Boom Studios. Then we have a Hellboy Stranger Things issue. And usually, so the way that's listed, I think it's like, yeah, so I think it's going to be a Hellboy story at first, and then the last part of the issue will be Stranger Things. I don't think it's like a crossover. It's just like they both are taking over that issue. Like the Stranger Things comics from Dark Horse. Then we have a DC Free Comic Book Day special edition. That's all we know about that one so far. DC and Marvel usually wait a little bit longer to announce their stuff, what exactly it's going to be. Johnny Quest by Dynamite. Dynamite Comics has been doing a lot of cool releases lately with more geared towards all ages or maybe cartoon properties. They do a lot of licensed comics, but like Gargoyles and Darkwing Duck have come out by Dynamite this year, and now Johnny Quest. And I loved Johnny Quest as a kid. That cartoon was mind-blowingly good as a kid. I just could not get enough of it. I always woke up early to watch it. So new Johnny Quest comics is exciting, and we're going to get the first preview of what that will be from Dynamite on Free Comic Book Day. Then we have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic. These are all the gold sponsor gold sponsor titles, by the way, which just means there's going to be like I think they do like gold, silver, and then whatever the last category is. I don't think it's bronze. But that means these are more limited, I guess, for shops, or shops have to pay a little bit more for these, so they get less of them. I don't know how that works, but I do know they're more limited in some fashion. And these are all the gold sponsor ones that I'm going over so far. But a TMNT title from IDW. The Energon universe, which is classified. The cover is classified. That's the Image Skybound Transformers G.I. Joe universe that they've started. Marvel's got a Ultimate Universe Spider-Man #1 that'll be coming out. Jonathan Hickman is taking over Ultimate Spider-Man, and they've also announced a few other Ultimate Universe titles that will be coming out as well. So that'll be a little preview for you. And then Marvel's also doing Blood Hunt X-Men. This is kind of the post Krakoa age X-Men new startup. So like after the Krakoa age that Jonathan Hickman kicked off, that will be concluded. And then this X-Men Blood Hunt series will be what starts it off, the new era of X-Men. We have Encanto from Paper Cuts. Witches of Brooklyn, exclusive comic and fun activities inside from Random House Graphics. Viz Media is going to be putting out a Pokemon/Splatoon issue here. So it'll be half Pokemon, half Splatoon, featuring those manga titles from Nintendo. And Gannibal from Ablaze. Gannibal, this manga, I believe, is getting a box set treatment from Kickstarter or something. But Ablaze manga is putting it out. It's been getting some pretty good hype for that. So Free Comic Book Day will be another good push. That's what Free Comic Book Day is good for, is these smaller publishers putting a good push and effort into a new title for the year forward and hopefully getting people on board. Because Free Comic Book Day brings in so many fans, or so many non-regular comic book fans into comic book shops. The idea is to get them to stick around, and hopefully they do. Then we have the exciting beginning of the Valiants. So Valiant Comics is now being published by Alien Books, which is a publisher I'm not familiar with. But this is a new era of the Valiant universe called The Valiants, and it'll be published by Alien Books. That'll be starting on New Comic Book Day. Cursed Verse by American Mythology. And then we have Snoopy Beagle Scout Adventures by Andrews McMeel Publishing. Ultra Duck by Arcana Studio. I love any sort of comic with a duck in it. I love. So I'm going to try this out. Like Donald Duck, Scrooge McDuck, Howard the Duck, Destroyer Duck, all the Duck comics. The Cursed Library Prelude from Archie Horror will be putting out another issue. They had one this past Free Comic Book Day. Boombox 10th Anniversary Extravaganza. So I'm assuming this will just be a packaged preview of a lot of Boombox titles. Young Jedi Adventures will be put out by Dark Horse. Yes, because Dark Horse is doing all the all-ages Star Wars comics now. Marvel has farmed out, or Disney, I guess, has farmed out the all-ages Star Wars comics to Dark Horse. But this will also have some Plants vs. Zombies comics in it as well. DC Middle Grade Special Edition, we don't know what that's going to be. And a DC Young Adult as well. Those previews, we don't know. Mad Magazine Free Comic Book Day Special Edition. Hopefully it has some classic Mad in there. Maleficent by Dynamite. It's another one of their all-ages titles they're putting out. Maleficent #1. Atlas. Marvel and Fantagraphics with the Atlas Library. It's one of the great new ventures that Fantagraphics is doing, as Marvel has farmed out their Atlas Library. Before they changed their name to Marvel Comics, like the horror, war, romance kind of titles are being reprinted by Fantagraphics. So a little preview issue will be in there, including a classic story by Stan Lee and Joe Meneely, which I think I have pulled up here. Let me see if I can. The story is called The Raving Maniac. Is that what it's called? And this is by Wyman.info. This website's what I'm pulling this off of. It's a classic comic book. I don't know if you've ever read this, but it's kind of making fun of Frederick Wortham and all of his hysteria around how comic books are ruining the youth. And so it's definitely a meta commentary single issue, a little bit deeper than Stan Lee's usual. And you can see on the panel I'm showing here, it's this guy's like, out of my way, I want to see the editor. And that's like the raving maniac there. And then he's yelling at the editor, who you can imagine is Stan Lee in this picture. Doesn't look like Stan Lee. Missing the mustache there. And I think back in this era, too, you would have had less hair before the toupee came into play. But then I love this panel. I always show this panel whenever people are complaining about, I don't know, woke comics or how comics aren't what they used to be, blah, 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 nonsense. I always love this line by the editor where he says, okay, so don't read them. Nobody's shoving them down your throat. That's always what I want to say to those idiots that are complaining about comics aren't what they used to be. Well, nobody's shoving them down your throat. Just read the stuff you want to read. There's so many comic books out there in the world. You can definitely find a comic book that is your bag, something that your jam, something you love. There's no reason to complain about. Don't waste your energy on comics you don't like. That's my little soapbox speech for the day. So that's the Atlas Library over here. That'll be by Fantagraphics. Fantagraphics always puts out an issue for Free Comic Book Day, and that's their effort this year. Then we got Investigators by First Second Books. Investigators is one of their popular series for the all ages kids crowd that also love like Dogman and stuff. Usually always investigators on Free Comic Book Day. Romeo versus Juliet, a kill Shakespeare adventure instead of Bill Shakespeare, William Shakespeare. We have a kill Shakespeare, Romeo versus Juliet. This is by Gemstone Publishing. Gemstone Publishing is also putting out a Overstreet Guide to Collecting Comics, Free Comic Book Day issue, which is an interesting effort on their part, I guess, that we're getting a Free Comic Book Day version. Unico Awakening and Monster High. Initial D by Kodansha. So we're going to get another manga. And Gotcha Man by Mad Cave Studios. Flash Gordon #0 by Mad Cave, as well as Marvel's Voices #1. Spidey and His Amazing Friends. Then here's the Star Wars one. So this is coming out on May the 4th. Be with you. This Free Comic Book Day. Well, Marvel is putting out a 2024 Star Wars #1 issue. So look forward to that. I Lie Popeye by Mad Cave, or Massive Publishing, I'm sorry. And I saw this was pitched as like Popeye meets One Piece manga, which sounds amazing. I love that idea. And then The Loud House over here. We have Asterix by Paper Cuts, and Penguin Young Readers is getting The Night Librarian by Christopher Lincoln. Max Meow and Katie the Cat Sitter by Random House Children's. That's a mashup of those two. Tons of Strange by Tin Ton Press. I love that EC inspired cover there. Doctor Who by Titan Comics, and Conan Battle of the Blackstone, also by Titan Comics. Far Cry, and then Street Fighter versus Final Fight are both being put out. Oh no, sorry. Far Cry is by Tokyo Pop. Udon is putting out the Street Fighter comic. Dying Inside by Volt, and One Piece Ace's Story and Status Royale for Viz Media. So it looks like Viz Media is packaging Ace Story from One Piece, maybe to try to get some new readers to try it out. And that's it. That is the Free Comic Book Day selections. Anybody know what they're going to be picking up from New Comic Day? Anybody a fan of those titles or interested by those titles? Let me see here. I've been meaning to reread a lot of books. Yeah, that's excuse me. That's something I always like to do, is reread comics, but there's so many new comics behind me that I need to read for the first time. It's hard to manage. It has. That's how I learned about May the 4th. Oh, okay. I absolutely hate the whole Star Wars May the 4th nonsense. Yeah. I mean, it's a gimmick to celebrate Star Wars once a year, and it's probably easier to memorize than like the anniversary date of Star Wars. The first Star Wars movie coming out. I'm hoping they nail Johnny Quest. I agree. My man, thank you. Yes. Okay. It's completely pushed out the remembrance of the Kent State shooting in favor of marketing an entirely corporatized IP. Okay. And it completely disgusted me. I never thought about it that way. And probably much to the point you're making is that the May the 4th Star Wars stuff has taken over that day of remembrance. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not going to argue with that at all. I like to get as many of the free kids comics and hand them out at Halloween. I've heard people do that, and I need to actually. My wife and I have been talking about putting a little library, a little lending library, out near our house. Like there's a bunch around town, but I want to put one near my house and put a bunch of comics in it, stuff like that, to hopefully engage new comics readers. I need to read Animal Castle. Speaking of push from Free Comic Day. Yeah, I haven't read that either. Ultra Duck, haven't seen that. What is Ultra? Is that I thought that was a new title. Does Ultra Duck exist previously? What is this Ultra Duck that I've never heard of? Damn the children. You wanted to hand out comics to them, and now you're damning them. First volume of Animal Castle was great. Volume 2 ended abruptly, felt very incomplete. Interesting. Complaining about anything being not what it used to be, or you couldn't do that today, is really small brain stuff. I agree. And I do feel I'm getting to the age finally, because whenever people complain about reboots or remakes of movies or whatever, I'm always like dumbfounded, because I'm like, if they remake your favorite movie, that doesn't mean that your favorite movie doesn't exist anymore. Like, if you hate the remake or the reboot or whatever, you can always just go back and ignore that and watch the stuff you love. Um, but yeah, in kind of that same vein, like, you couldn't do that today, or not what it used to. Yeah, I agree. Especially the you couldn't do that today conversation, when people don't add the nuance to it. So like, um, there was a really interesting conversation on Near Make Edition, where they were talking about what books Marvel should make evergreen. It was a live show that Omar did with a panel of like five other people. Sorry, um, and but there was a conversation that I had that was really interesting about God Loves Man Kills by X-Men, and also Runaways by Brian K. Vaughan. Now, in Runaways, they were Curtis over at the Epic Marvel podcast was discussing that there's some language in the Runaways comic book that wouldn't fly today, because they were saying that if they want these books to be put into middle school libraries, that they would have to be conscientious of an audience of adults that would be like, we can't put that into our libraries because of this. Curtis was not advocating for censorship or anything like that. Was not advocating for changing old material. I just want to put that out there. Like, don't come at him like that. He was just saying, specifically for putting these in middle school libraries, we have to be conscientious of this thing. Now, we all know, if you've read God Loves Man Kills, the X-Men graphic novel, there is some language in there, some racist language in there, specifically like towards Black people. And they kind of compare it to the prejudice that people within the story have towards mutants, because that's what X-Men's about, right? Mutants and humans getting along. So that language in that context, in that comic, in my opinion, should not be edited at this point, because within the story, the people using that bad language are the bad guys. And in that story, you have the provided context that this language is not good. You do not use this language because that bad guy in the story is using that language. Whenever any sort of prejudice or things that don't fly today, to Cycle's verbiage, if it's the bad guy or the villain saying it, and especially if that bad guy or villain gets their comeuppance by the end of the story, I never have an issue with it. If it's the hero saying stuff like that, then obviously, like, that's stupid. So in the context of God Man Loves Kills, I don't think that should be edited or changed whatsoever, especially, or even if you're putting that into libraries, because it's kind of what you get from like To Kill a Mockingbird, and like those kinds of stories that have similar language, but within the story is giving you context that this language is not good. Now, to compare that to Runaways, where they're using homophobic pejoratives, and they're not giving it any sort of context. They're just using it as a pejorative to say someone is dumb or lame or stupid or whatever, but they're using the homophobic version. There's no context within that story that language is bad. So if a new kid were to read that story with maybe their head in the sand, or maybe their parents kind of shield them from things, and they see that, they might not understand the context that this language is not cool, not okay, it's offensive, that kind of thing. So it's an interesting discussion. So that you couldn't do that today, I think there needs to be nuance with it, because you can still tell the story of God Loves Man Kills today exactly the same way, in my opinion, because the context is there. The dialogue in Runaways, I don't think you could do that today. So it's just like there needs to be some nuance to these comments that people make. Does that make sense? There's another soapbox for me. That's what you get with Taylor Talks Comics Live. I get on my soapbox a few times. My only complaint of comics aren't what they used to be, the price. Oh, I missed the $3 or less. I agree. I do think Marvel and DC have priced themselves out of bringing in new readers. There's a lot of things. We're actually going to talk about one thing that DC's doing on our next news story that I like that might bring in some new readers. So stay tuned for that. Agreed. If you don't like a comic, there are so many options out there, old and new, to choose from. It's such a dull discussion. I agree. It's all those idiot YouTubers. Sorry for my language, I guess, that I'm calling them that. But all the people on YouTube, comics YouTube, that are saying like Marvel and DC are awful, they're woke, they're ruining comics are dying. I think they're all smart enough to know this, hopefully, that they're just playing a gimmick to get viewership and a gimmick to get views and whatnot. Maybe they're not. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit. But they're always ignoring the fact that if you're not into Marvel and DC because they're woke or whatever dumb, lame term you want to attach to it, there's Dark Horse, there's Image, there's Fantagraphics, there's self-published stuff, there's Kickstarters. There's a million different ways to read comics today. There's literally a comic book out there for everybody. You can tell me your aunt or uncle that are coming over for Thanksgiving this week. Tell me like what their favorite movie is, and I can hand you a comic book that might interest them. So this whole, I agree. I don't want to dive too much into that because it's just such a dumb discussion. There's some wild stuff being done today. I hate that you couldn't do that today. Boils my blood a little, to be honest. Yeah. Hopefully, what I said made sense and maybe people agree with it. If not, let me know. If what I just said, my whole little diatribe, I was wrong or whatever, call me out. Or if you agree with it, let me know. Plus, back in my day when the stuff you can't do today was happening, companies were literally being shut down for content that was tame compared to today. Yeah. Big news with, oh yeah, the manga. Initial D, I think you're talking about. Not a fan of the paper cuts translation of Asterix. Elon, yes. For the Love of Comics, one of my favorite YouTube channels, enlightened me to that because he did a great comparison of the old Asterix albums with their English translations compared to what Paper Cuts is doing. And that actually, I had the first 3 of the Paper Cuts hardcovers. After watching that video, I sold them and refused to buy anymore because one of the things that really confused me and opened my eyes from what the For the Love of Comics was saying was that a lot of like the wordplay jokes in Asterix were being ruined by these new translations by Paper Cuts. And I was like, if a comic is especially known for kind of wordplay, you can't get that translation wrong. So it made me want to read the original, because I've not read a lot of Asterix besides those that I had and sold. I want to read the original albums now, but they're kind of harder to find. Not super hard. I just need to do a little bit of hunting. Omnibus love to say things can't be made today. I think there needs to be, again, like I said, if there's context within that, it can absolutely be made today. It just needs to have the context there. All these like any of these politicians or celebrities that say like things are offensive or whatnot or not PC, hopefully they're viewing whatever the whole content of that is, if it's a comic book or a book or a movie or whatever, and giving a chance for that comic book movie or whatever to provide that context and nuance to it. I don't know. They're really becoming very crotchety out of old men. I blame myself. I left Omnibros for too long. More of a pinch punch first of the month guy cycle. I usually take the kids out for a free comic book day, grab a few things. Nothing there really jumps out at me, but my daughter usually loves to grab some books she's never seen before. Yes, it's been a kind of a tradition for my son and I to go. In Comic Book University, the aforementioned they still have a section. Hopefully they keep it, of like kids, like they have a whole corner of kids comics where they have a lot of like the Harvey stuff, like Harvey comics that are still coming out, like Casper and Richie Rich, and even they have like Scooby-Doo stuff over there. Oh, and My Little Pony. So he always likes to dabble in that section and buy a couple things on Free Comic Book Day, which is important. Free Comic Book Day, make purchases at those comic book shops too, because they have to pay for those free comics. And the whole idea is to get people into comic book shops to spend money. You don't have to buy it a lot. Just buy a book or two, just show your support. So many little libraries in my neighborhood and surrounding area. I take it as a sign of a good town. Yes. And my town has a lot of them. I just want to make one that's like more comics focused. And people can put books in there too. I'm not going to like throw those out of there, but I myself, I'm going to contribute comics to it. I've never read Ultra Duck. It's done by Edgar Delgado. Been following the artist for years. I'm going to look into that. Don't hesitate to do it, Taylor. Our town has renovated all of our old phone booths, boxes into libraries, and have defibrillator. That's an amazing idea. Like the old, the old phone booths that are not necessary anymore, to just repurpose those. That's an awesome idea. It almost makes you want to make a lending library done out of an old phone booth. Yes, if they remake something, who cares? If they adapt a comic I love, who cares? If the creator I love gets paid, that's great. But a movie is never going to be as good as a great comic, so I never expect it to be. I agree. And as far as the creator getting paid, I'm always excited to see when a creator's comic book gets optioned, even if it doesn't get made, because if they get optioned, they get paid for that. So like one of my favorite stories, like Peter Bagg, who's one of my all-time favorite cartoonists, his comic book Hate from the 90s got optioned like a handful of times. It's never been made into a cartoon. I guess the closest it got, he said, was Fox was between Hate or Bob's Burgers, and they made Bob's Burgers, which I love Bob's Burgers, so I'm not upset I'm not upset about that at all. But whenever it gets optioned, Peter Bagg gets paid for that. So he's getting paid like six figures or maybe more. I don't know. He never put a dollar amount to it. But it basically money he's living off of just from his comic book being optioned. That's amazing. I love to hear the stories like that. All that language and even more is flying. Yeah, Curtis is making a separate point. Yeah, I want to make sure that was known, because Curtis is not in favor of censorship. He was just making a very good point about things that are being banned from libraries and whatnot. People die taking selfies. Let's not write for that demographic. Okay. That's a funny point. You can question how successful things are that are still being made in the old way, thinking that using a certain language by bygone context, that's a different story, but it's also still happening. Yes, again, there needs to be context and nuance. If the media stops using language, newsflash, people will still say the bad words in the real world. Also a good point. But there are also things being made with every level language and situation that mainstream people might think it's bad. Yep. Idiot YouTubers is appropriate language. Reserved even. I agree. I just don't want to get into this like YouTube drama, infighting. One of those guys is going to come after me. I've already had my past and history with those guys. I want this to be a positive channel and a positive community. We're still going to talk about the serious stuff if we need to, but I don't want like this YouTube drama farmers where like this YouTube channel hates that YouTube channel and they get a lot of views because of it and they start making videos about each. I don't want to get into that. So that's the only reason why I reserved my language was because I don't want one of them to be like, oh, that guy thinks we're idiots or whatever. Monthly floppy comics are dying. I think we're growing pain. I do agree. I don't want to get on my soapbox today, but I have a lot of thoughts about what they need to do for that. Hey, my wife is in here. My beautiful, wonderful wife. Hey, Taylor, I think you're cute. Thank you. I love you. That's my wife, everybody. Kathleen. Agreed. Diatribe was great. Thank you, Cycle. I want to get more asterisks. It kills me that Paper Cuts is doing. We could both learn French, Josh. That's also, I think Cycle has told me he uses a Google Translator on his phone when he reads foreign stuff. And I almost want to try that because there's some stuff that's never been printed in English that I want to read. All right, I got to cycle through here a little bit faster. Cycle, Cleveland. Cycle through here. People died doing dumb things. Get into Taylor. Become the red bar of comics. Go to war. Oh, no, I don't. There's no reason to do that. I'm going to do a video where I call you out for calling other YouTubers idiots, Taylor. I'm going to be rich. You do. I know, Comic Crack, you do have your own YouTube channel. By all means. I mean, if it gets me views, I won't engage myself. But if people are out there, get my stuff up there. You need to read Xenozoic Tales. It was a OG comic of the show. Yes, I have a single issue of a reprint of Xenozoic Tales where they relabeled it Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. But I know Mark Schultz put out a thick trade paperback collecting all Xenozoic Tales. I definitely need to get that. Mark Schultz's artwork is amazing. The whole concept is amazing. Who doesn't love dinosaurs and big 50s cars, right? Future post-apocalypse, like that's all right there. I want to drink that in and read that. I just need to pick that up. But I agree, and his artwork is brilliant. But I had that one single issue I picked up at a comic book shop one time. And I really do think it was just an issue of Xenozoic Tales as repackaged as Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Yeah, I used translation app to read the new Burns comic. Yes, that's the one you were trying to get me to, or you were telling me about. And I was trying to figure out which translation app you were using. But now we found out that Pantheon is printing that in English next year, all in one. So I think I'm just going to wait till that comes out. Flex Publishing has collected. Yes, the Xenozoic Tales. All right. Let's get on to the DC news. So one thing I always hate and talk about quite often, if you've watched my show, I'm sure you've heard me saying something about this, or watched me on CGN Live, whatever, is I hate when I go into a Walmart or Target. I always go through the book aisle just to check out what's on the shelves. And there is typically just manga in that section, manga and like Dogman and whatnot. And I don't hate that that's there. I love that. Any sort of comics or sequential art, manga, Dogman, Investigators, whatever it is, that stuff can stay on the shelves. But what I hate is that Marvel and DC are not making an effort to put stuff next to it. And one things that the aforementioned idiot YouTubers always talk about, I'll just go and say it, Cycle, since you gave me the pass, is they're like, manga's killing Marvel and DC in sales. And while that's true, the nuance they don't provide, the context they don't provide is that those aren't like Marvel DC fans leaving Marvel and DC to go to manga. There are some cases where that's the case. I'm sure people reading this chat have started off as Marvel DC and have dabbled in manga, whatever. There's probably, a few dozen cases of that, whatever. But the majority of the manga readers are like middle school, high school age kids. And that's like their first introduction to sequential art. Their first introduction to comics is through manga, whether it be from anime or whatever got them into it. Same thing with Dogman. Like Dogman is young kids that have never read comics ever, getting into comics for the first time through Dogman. That to me is not a sign of the comic book industry dying because Marvel and DC are not thriving as well as those markets. To me, that's a sign of the comic book industry thriving and growing in a way where the audience potential has never been bigger, never been better. So I think that I want to. So whenever I go into the stores, I'm wondering why Marvel and DC are not putting their books right next to that audience, because that the audience is shopping mostly in the book market, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, that those sorts of things. They're not going to comic book shops. Unfortunately, I wish they would. Marvel and DC needs to put an effort into putting their stuff on the shelves next to those books. Well, now it appears that DC is going to make that effort. DC is announcing the DC Compact Comics. This is their press release. This is from DC.com. You can see the cover art there is from Far Sector. I'm going to scroll through here. So they're now making these compact comics that are going to be like manga tankobon sized. They do, here, I'll scroll down here. Here's like the size comparison. Your average trade paperback is 6 5/8 by 10 3/16. These are going to be 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. So on this picture here, you can see on the left is their typical classic standard size trade paperback of Watchmen. On the right, we're getting this DC compact version that is going to be 5.5 by 8.5 inches, a little bit smaller, manga sized, to kind of gear it towards that audience that's used to reading their comics in that trim size. They're called DC Compact Comics. So that's a trim size there. But they're also really pushing for this to be a big deal in the book market. These are all going to be $9.99. Great price point, great entry point, because that's the same price as your typical manga tankobon is like $9.99 to $12.99. So keep it at that price point of that same audience that buys their comics. It's going to be a thick trade. Here's two examples right here. We're going to have Far Sector on the left by N.K. Jemisin and Jamal Campbell. On the right, we have an example of their DC Compact Comics of All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, that's getting a big push through DC right now because James Gunn has announced that's one of the inspirations for the Superman Legacy movie that's coming out next year or 2025. I forget. But also you can see here, if you look close on the DC Compact Comics logo at the top, or the trade dress, right underneath it, it has like a genre title. So this is DC Compact Comics. For Far Sector, it says science fiction. Can you see my cursor? Let's see if my cursor shows up on the screen. I don't know if it does or not. And then on All Star Superman, it says fantasy. So this is one way for them to do infiltrate the book market, is by putting these. They want these to be put in those same sections too, not just the comic book section, but like if you go to Barnes and Noble, they have like a table set up of like new fantasy titles or new science fiction. They wanted to be on those tables with your prose novels of those genres with the comic book. They're trying to find ways to get prose novel readers, to get manga readers to read comic books. And that's what we need. If Marvel and DC are going to thrive, we've got to get new readers in there. And this is a great way to do it. I love this initiative. I want to support this all the way. Maybe in my lending library, I'll buy a bunch of these and shove them in there to get people to read them. But these are the titles they're going to launch it with. They're going to have Watchmen, Batman Court of Owls, All-Star Superman, Far Sector, Wonder Woman Earth 1 by Grant Morrison and Yannick Paquette, American Vampire Book 1. I didn't see that one coming. Scott Snyder, Stephen King, and Raphael Albuquerque. Batman Hush, it's an obvious one. Joker by Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo. Harley Quinn and the Gotham City Sirens. That's by Paul Dini, Gillian March, Tony Bedard, Andreas Gilinato, Peter Calloway. And then Catwoman Trail of the Catwoman by Darwin Cook and Ed Brubaker. That a different name, didn't it? Yeah, isn't that Catwoman of East End? They changed the name to Trail of the Catwoman. And then here's some more of the covers. So we got Batman Hush, which is being geared towards mystery. Watchmen is a thriller genre title. And that's it for that. Great idea. I don't think they came out with a really great launch list of titles here. You've got like horror in there, you've got genre, you've got mystery, you've got fantasy. So it's really trying to show new readers that these aren't not just superheroes. These aren't just keeps and cows, that if you're into a thriller genre, you might like Watchmen kind of thing. Now I can go on my soapbox about how I don't know if Watchmen is the best gateway comic. I really don't think it is. But if it gets someone to read a comic book, I think it's the greatest comic book of all time. I've heard that it is a gateway comic for some people, that it was their first comic. Maybe it will be, but regardless, I love this initiative. $9.99 for these, and they are tankobon sized. I can't love that enough. I support it. What are you guys' thoughts about that? Xenozoic Tales. Okay. No spoilers, but for the new Burns comic, I'd say watch the 50s Invasion of the Body Snatchers in the last picture show before the new Burns. Cycle, I'm going to take a picture of that. I absolutely love that. And I love just some people say like Grant Morrison has comic books where it's like you have to read this book before you read this to really understand it, kind of thing. I kind of love that. People are like, that's homework. I love it. And I just actually read recent reads for the first time. I finally read Alex Ross's Fantastic Four for Full Circle. And I bought it the day it came out. I just been waiting to read it. I was waiting to read it when I did like a full Fantastic Four readathon, because it really takes place in the Lee Kirby era of Fantastic Four. And after issue 51, This Man, This Monster, Fantastic Four is like my favorite Marvel comic ever, especially the Lee Kirby era. So I just kind of been putting it off. But I finally read This Man, This Monster. I was like, fine, I'm just going to read that single issue and then read Full Circle right afterwards. And I almost wish they collected This Man, This Monster in that book, because it added so much context to the comic book. I've read that issue before, This Man, This Monster. But for new readers, they should. And Alex Ross Full Circle is brilliant. Like masterpiece comics. I loved it. But I love that. I love having like, watch this movie and then it'll add more context to the comic reading. Damn Japanese making me spend thousands. Started off Dark Horse, then went into manga. Now I'm trying to read more of the big two. Dark Horse has been a publisher that's really done a good job of intermingling their comics with manga. I see other companies doing a similar thing, like Titan is doing it. They have their own manga line. Ablaze is doing a lot of it. So I like to see these publishers adding manga to the titles. Fantagraphics has added a lot more manga to their catalog, and Drawn and Quarterly has always kind of had that in there. I like when publishers do both. Do we know if Pantheon is going to put it out in a big paperback edition like Last Look? That's what tipped me over into buying the. I don't know. We don't know that. And I do know what you're talking about, because Last Look was like the oversized paperback version of the previous 3 hardcovers of that story. I don't know. I kind of hope it gets like a big French album looking thing. Would be cool. They finally learned the right lesson, right? I agree. Cheaper than manga now. Yeah, because these are titles too. Like these are old collected edition titles that have ran the gamut. Like they've made their money off of it. They've made their money off of Watchmen. They can sell it for $9.99 now, and even if it's at a loss or whatever, because these are full color. These aren't black and white. So we have to remember that too. Manga is cheaper to print because it's in black and white on cheaper paper. So a $9.99 manga tankobon is cheaper to print than it will be for DC to print these in full color at $9.99. So you have to keep that in mind. DC's not going to be making a lot of money off of these, but these are supposed to be the gateway. You give these at a cheap price, hopefully bring in new readers. And Viz just raised their prices to $11.99. Problem with DC and Marvel is not the formats, but the barrier to entry and understanding the reading order with manga. I just pick up the next volume number and it's written and drawn by the same person. I agree. And that's like the nature of the beast, of how they're both published. And I don't think that Marvel and DC can change that, especially with all the damage done. Like if Marvel and DC were just to go back to the legacy numbers for all their titles and never ever do another new number 1 for a new title, it would still be confusing, because then you'd still have all this back matter of like, well, there's like 15 different Batman number 1s. Where does it jump off on? So initiatives like this are good entry points, because it's like, here's Watchmen, it's all in one. You only need to buy 1 volume. Batman Court of Owls, that whole story arc is in this 1 book for $9.99. If you want more, here's the rest of the story. So you have these new jumping on points with, hopefully, maybe at the end of the book, they'll tell you where to go next. With that said, I do think as American comic book readers, we get hung up on a lot of like, well, like, where do I start reading this Spider-Man title? Like, I'm a little bit behind in the continuity. If you're not able to just pick up a comic book at the beginning of an arc, which is usually now labeled as a number 1 issue, and start there and not be confused, then the writer and creative team is doing it wrong. So I hear this a lot. Like, I don't know why this example is coming to my head, but like the Mark Millar Fantastic Four omnibus comes before Jonathan Hickman's omnibus, like directly before. Like Mark Millar's ends, and then Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run starts. Someone might ask, well, do I need to read Mark Millar's first before reading Hickman's? You could, and it might add a little bit more context to certain storyline points, but you shouldn't have to. You should just be able to read the Jonathan Hickman omnibus number 1 and be okay. So I think a lot of times we get hung up on things like that. And I'm not saying that your point's not well made, and I'm not saying that isn't an issue. I just don't think it's as big of an issue as it should be. And I also think that Marvel and DC could do a better job of saying, if you like that movie, read this collected edition right here, kind of thing. If I have finished volume 56, yeah, and yes, correct. I mean, that's definitely something that manga has going for it that Marvel and DC almost will never be able to have going for it. But that doesn't mean that there isn't good starting points for Marvel and DC to be able to introduce to people, saying like, you like Fantastic Four, start with this one. You like Spider-Man, start with this book. In doing things like this, having these on the shelves, if I'm a non-comic book reader, I'm a manga reader, and I walk into Walmart and I'm like, see that Rorschach cover of Watchmen, I'm like, that looks interesting. if DC is doing their job properly, that person that doesn't know anything about Watchmen should be able to pick up the book and not be lost. So it's almost like you need to introduce the new readers to these concepts. And by then, there's so many online resources too of what to start with. Good list, all in one and done. Yes, I agree. This is a common complaint I get from manga only readers that usually love the MCU movies and want to know. Yeah, it's a valid complaint too. Maybe volume 5. I feel like they should look at JoJo Bizarre Adventures. Each story is split into parts with different generations. I do think like FF Lee Kirby could be part 1. Then that would be an interesting way to collect it. JoJo's Bizarre Adventures is a really good example of that. Because they have, and each story starts off with a new number 1, right? That's actually a really good manga example. So you do like Lee Kirby 1 through 102 is part 1, and then 103 through whatever. There's so many different creative teams at that point. Would be part 2. John Burns will be like part 4 or 5. I could see that. So I want to find a solution because I want people to read these great stories. I mean, the solution is if you're in the know of what comic books are and starting points and whatnot. If you have a friend that saw like the new Captain Marvel movie or the Marvels, and they're like, I really like that Kamala Khan character. What can I read? Then you as a comic book reader, just give them like this collected edition. Say like, oh, this trade paperback is where you start. Like that's what we have to do as ambassadors of the comic book industry is like know what those jumping on points are for those people. The format change is going to bring in new readers. I don't think the superhero genre on the whole appeals to audiences that are buying manga. And that's a good point too. But it's just like it's just a thing that's like if you have the book that's similar in size, it's going to look like manga. You know, like I see a lot of web comics in Walmart and Target too that looks similar to manga, and it almost kind of bleeds into one into the other. It's kind of like, oh, I read this sequential art. This looks like comics or this looks like manga. Maybe I'll try this one out. I do think it matters. Maybe not to people that have read a lot of these things. I feel like they're grasping at straws. Maybe. We'll see. I guess we'll see how it works out. But hey, I've been wrong plenty of times. We all have. Buy Omnibus. I'd love to see Omnibus in stores like that, but I don't think that's going to happen. I did see the Berserk manga at Walmart. That's pretty cool. The deluxe editions. What else can I go over? Let's go over these new solicitations real fast, and then we'll close out the show. This will be like I want to go over a sale that In Stock Trades is doing too, real quickly. But so a lot of the new publishers, not new publishers, a lot of the publishers are doing their new solicitations. This is coming from comicreleases.com, a great website that I think it's Chris Parkhouse, I think is his name, runs. He goes by Webhead is his internet name. But he does a great job here. He keeps up to date on collected editions and what their release dates are. So I just wanted to scroll through these. I'm not going to go over all of them. But this was Dark Horses. I don't know if anything stood out to me here. But these are their February solicitations. I'm trying to see here. Oh, Innocent, Volume 2. So we talked about the Innocent manga earlier. The Innocent Volume 2 is going to be 632 pages, $29.99, and it is due out April of 2023. So if you bought that first volume, you just have to wait till April to get the next. Eerie Archives, Volume 5. They're pumping these out. Volume 5 is due out in April. Jim Steranko is in there. That's interesting. I didn't know he did work for Eerie. Tim Seeley's new book, Vampire Hunter D. Oh, World of Black Hammer Omnibus Volume 3. A little note, I will have the reading order of Black Hammer this week, I promise. I'm supposed to have it this week. Or I was supposed to have it last week, but it'll be this week. The reading order of Black Hammer. This is World of Black Hammer Omnibus Volume 3. 248 pages, $29.99. It's due out in April. Tales of the Crypt. Witchfinder is getting a paperback omnibus that's previously been released in hardcover. So Dark Horse doesn't have a ton. Let's go to Boom Studios. Their solicitations for their February solicitations. Got Power Rangers, a couple of those soft covers, House of Slaughter. I don't think they have any big hardcovers or anything. Let's go to IDW. Really just try and coast through these. We had a great conversation today, though, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. And I do appreciate the conversation. They don't have much in here. In the chat. I love it. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this live show. Marvel. So we have Daredevil by Chip Zdarsky, Omnibus Volume 1 is due out in, what's the date on this? Do we not have a date on this? I don't know. Okay, it's due out in the spring. It's going to be 696 pages. Uncanny X-Force by Rick Remender is getting a new printing and two covers this time. I think it's only had one cover in previous printings. And then we have Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale, Captain America Gallery Edition. So they've done Daredevil, they've done Spider-Man, they're going to do Hulk Gray and Captain America. So Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, they're 4 different colored stories for Marvel, will be all released in gallery editions. House of M Companion Omnibus. And then we got some Masterworks, trade paperbacks, any of those of note. There's some Epic collections and Marvelverse books. See these Marvelverse books here I'm showing off? Those are the same like digest tankobon sized, but you don't see those in Walmart and Target. And I don't understand why, because these are specifically geared towards new readers. They're kind of like a greatest hits type deal of these characters, trying to introduce them to them. This Deadpool one is obviously geared towards the new Deadpool movie coming out. Why are these not in department stores and book markets? I don't understand it. But DC, who, like I said, is doing it right. We have the Justice League Dark Rebirth Omnibus. It's coming out in April. This one's I'm excited about. The Flash by Joshua Williamson Omnibus, Volume 1. That'll be due out in April. I just recently read, I think, basically all the contents of this omnibus, and it was really great. So I'm more excited about what a Volume 2 and 3 would be eventually, because Joshua Williamson's run on Flash ran for over 100 issues. But I'm always excited to see more Flash. Absolute All-Star Superman. So we're getting that tankobon compact comic size, but we're also getting a reprint of the Absolute edition. And then I think we're getting Lobo Compendium. I'm really excited about this one. It's going to be 1,256 pages. Paperback, standard size, but includes all of the great classic Lobo stuff, including his first appearance in the Omega Men 3, but also his great Keith Giffen and Simon Bisley stuff and Alan Grant comics that came out after that. I love Lobo. I'm excited. I wish it was an omnibus, but I'll take what I can get. I think that's all I wanted to highlight there. Let me get to the chat here before I get to the last thing I want to cover. Okay. Let's look at it this way. Someone might pick up Watchmen since cheaper, and a lot of people heard about it. I think this is all the right moves. That's true. The price point is a better entry price point into this, because I've seen Watchmen in Targets and Walmart department stores. Usually DC will have 1 or 2 books there. IDW's been really pushing the Last Ronin hardcover in this Targets and Walmarts, which is great. That's a great book to start people off with that love turtles. But I've seen Watchmen in there before. But yeah, that's like a $24, $30 book in that trade paperback. $9.99 is definitely, people might try that. New Goon, yes, I did pass over it, but there is new Goon content coming out from Eric Powell that he's doing the artwork for. The last couple mini-series of Goon the art was done by Roger Langridge, who's an amazing cartoonist. But I love when Eric Powell's drawing it. This is almost like guaranteed, right? We're going to definitely get library editions, like surely, like that's going to happen since he's back with Dark Horse. Been enjoying this myself. Vampire Hunter D. I've never tried that out, but I might have to give it a shot. And the last thing I want to share here is In Stock Trades is doing a Black Friday / Cyber Monday, whatever type deal sale they're doing. Just want to highlight this real fast and then I'll get out of here. So starting today, these are all starting, each of these, like every day they're doing different sales. And they all start at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So the start time of this show today is when these all started. So from Tuesday, November 21st through Tuesday, November 28th for a week. Now, it's already started. It'll end on Tuesday, November 28th at noon Eastern. DC will be 40% off, 45% off. Image will be 45% off. Dark Horse Comics will be 40% off. And Marvel, 42% off. And I don't think this will be every single book under those publishers. That's just the discount for the majority of what they have. So that's all week. All 4 of those publishers with those discounts all week. Tuesday, starting today, Kodansha, Vertical, Viz Media, and Yin Press will all have discounts. Kodansha and Vertical will be 40% off. Viz Media at 35% off, and Yin Press up to 30% off. That is today until tomorrow at noon. So if you're into manga, there you go. And then starting tomorrow at noon through Thursday at noon, you'll have IDW up to 40% off and Boom Studios up to 35% off. Thursday will be Fantagraphics and Dynamite Day. So from Thursday at noon to Friday at noon, Fantagraphics and Dynamite titles will be discounted up to 35% off. And then on Friday, Black Friday, November 24th, starting at noon all the way through Tuesday, November 28th at noon, the loyalty discount, which is normally 2% off, will be bumped up to 3% off. So there you go for in-stock trades if you want to buy some comics for yourself or for family members. Having a great sale this week. I'm going to go over my plugs real fast. Getting any last comments or questions, I will address those after I get done with my plugs, and then we'll get out of here. But yes, follow me on Instagram at Taylor Talks Comics. Follow me on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it, at TM Talks Comics. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Give the video a thumbs up. And the best thing you could do, and I always appreciate when people do this, I ask all of you guys to do this on your social medias. If you can share the link to this video or link to my channel, it's free. It doesn't cost you a thing to do that, just a little bit of your time. I appreciate that. I'm trying to get more eyeballs on this channel as I can, and that's the best way you can support me. That doesn't cost you a dime. Looks like the chat is done now. No more comments, no more questions. Thank you guys all for watching. We'll be back. Let me see. I should have done this beforehand. Let me check my calendar for next week. Yes, next Tuesday at noon will be the next show. So next Tuesday at noon will be the next episode of Taylor Talks Comics Live. These will always be available on replay if you can't join me at that time. But join me for the live chat if you want to. Noon Tuesday, November 28th. I'll be back. But also I'll have content on my channel throughout the week with new videos, pre-recorded stuff. Thank you guys for joining me. Follow me on all the social media. Share the video with all your friends. Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Keep reading comics.